Hey everybody, how's it going? Kuroda here. Rachel's with me.
Greetings. Hey everybody.
And you know what you're gonna have to say for the outro of this, right? Anyway.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, guys, how's it going? As you guys probably saw by the thumbnail and the title and everything, this video is about Star Trek.
Our favorite thing.
So if any of you who have watched my channel regularly know, you probably know that we've been watching a lot of Star Trek because we always reference it.
We're big fans.
Yeah. So we recently finished the original series, for me the first time, for you the second time, and we kind of came up with this idea of like just doing a review of the entire like original series because we're both such big fans of it. And yeah, we both wrote lists of our favorite episodes, and we also want to try to do a collective list on this video. So yeah, without further ado, we're gonna talk about Star Trek, the original series.
Yay!
So I want you to start like. So, you watched this before I ever did. You went through the whole series with your brother and everything. What is it about this show that you really like?
Well, as I've said to you, as you know, and most people who know me know, I'm like a huge sci-fi fan in general. I love stories that deal with the kinds of things that Star Trek deal with. Like, I love space. I love... like as I said, there's a lot of social commentary in Star Trek, which I really like.
Kind of deep philosophical themes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Comments on human nature and stuff like that. It's just very creative and out there. I don't really like kind of mundane, normal stories. I like things that deal with the realm of fantasy and like imagination. And
same here.
Star Trek is just so creative and so different. So.
And I think for its time, it really broke down a lot of barriers, both socially and like in terms of like telling a story and philosophically. Like certainly in TV, because there were other shows like Lost in Space. I don't know if you've ever seen the original Lost in Space.
I've seen a couple episodes.
And it's kind of more like hokey, sort of like. It's like this. I would equate it as like sort of like the space version of Gilligan's Island, if anybody knows, you know. So it was kind of like a little silly and everything, but Star Trek really kind of delved into deeper like subjects and tried to have a lot of social commentary and that type of stuff. So
people would say it's silly too, which it is.
Yeah, and people, of course, by today's standards, sure, it was silly, but if you kind of take
it for what it is,
if you take a few steps back to the '60s and you look at everything else that was around in the 60s in terms of like entertainment, movies, TV and stuff, it was actually pretty far ahead of its time. So I really think it kind of has a special mark on popular culture, on like television, on science fiction and everything. And it also, I think, really was one of those things along with Star Wars that really brought sci-fi to the mainstream, you know? And in a way that's a lot deeper than it had been previously. I mean, you and I have watched a whole bunch of old science fiction movies, and I really think there's, for the most part, a lot of silliness. While there is some really good movies like Forbidden Planet and War of the Worlds and stuff like that, I think a lot of it was rooted in kind of silly monster movie kind of quality
we've seen
things.
A lot of like horror movies, like sci-fi horror hybrids.
Yeah, stuff like that. So, but I really felt like Star Trek kind of broke down a lot of the sort of sci-fi tropes in a way and kind of established a more I don't want to use the word serious, but a more deep and meaningful kind of and philosophical kind of way of looking at sci-fi. I think that hadn't been there before.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I feel like Star Trek was more like the like a visual version of a lot of sci-fi novels, you know. It wasn't really like action-y like a movie. It was more like a lot of the novels I've read from the 50s and whatnot, you know. It's all about like ideas rather than action. Not always, but a lot of the time in Star Trek.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I don't know, in terms of like the show itself, like I love the cast. It's one of those shows that has just the perfect cast in my opinion. Although I would say for me a criticism is, and this is something I think some of these actors have complained about a lot, is that I think that some of the characters could have done, you know, it would have helped their character a little bit to be more developed.
Yeah.
You know, Sulu was never really well developed. Chekhov maybe a little bit more than some of the other ones, but even him and like Uhura, really, especially those three characters, I would say. And maybe even Scotty a little more too. It would have been nice to have him a little more fleshed out.
I don't feel like it's really the strength of the cast, more so the strength of the characters. Like there are some of them that are flat, but some of them are just like so beloved. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But any other actor probably could have portrayed them, because none of them are like stellar actors. No offense to them.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, but the main three characters, of course, being like William Shatner as Kirk, Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and DeForest Kelley as McCoy. Those three characters are really. The show really, in terms of characters, centers around those three a lot, and the dynamic between the three, which we love.
Yes, we do.
It's just so good. And we always talk about how we ship Spock and Kirk.
Everybody does. There's just so much material there, you know?
Yeah, of course there is. And yeah, I don't know. I thought that for the time, you know, I mean, of course, like it featured in the one episode, the first interracial kiss, you know, which was a pretty big deal back in the day. And, you know, the fact that there was even like a black woman who was the main character, one of the main characters of a show, and was on, you know, every night, and was considered like not just like being one of the main characters, but sort of considered like an equal, like how do I want to say, like an equal partner in the whole ship's crew of the Enterprise. You know, that was kind of big for its time, you know?
Yeah, the show was really progressive in some ways for its time. It's interesting to see how, like, in some ways it was way ahead of the times, and in some ways it was so of the time, you know?
Yeah,
like, yes, the fact that Uhura was there,
and
there were people that were not Caucasian in positions of power and stuff, but at the same time, like, characters from other cultures were kind of like cliches of that culture. Like, someone like Scotty is kind of like a hilarious, like, you know, cliche.
Yeah.
And the women are wearing like mini skirts, and like they're like done up to the nines, and like a lot of the time they're in kind of more female.
A lot of that
professions.
And I'm not trying to just excuse it, but a lot of that still exists today, I think. But it's
definitely
it's certainly very
does.
It's I give a lot of credit to Star Trek, especially for the time, for trying to be more like sort of culturally inclusive.
I do, but I also feel like I want to still be a little critical of it.
Sure.
And a lot of sci-fi at the time, like I said, I've read a lot of sci-fi novels from that time, and it's just funny how a lot of them are like so progressive and so creative in a lot of the things they think about, but then they have like these, I feel like especially sexist cliches that they just can't like conceptualize any differently. You know? It's just kind of funny.
That definitely makes sense. So. There's definitely a few episodes of that. But I feel like, that stuff aside, regardless, the strongest episodes of Star Trek seem to be ones that have kind of those deep philosophical messages, which there's quite a few of, you know?
Yes.
And I don't know, if you want, we can get right into our lists here if you want to do that. Okay. So I guess I'll go first. So these are my top 10 episodes that I chose. Now I'm gonna go in descending order, so from like the 10 being my least favorite to 1 being my favorite. So the first number 10 for me is Trouble with Tribbles. This episode is hilarious. It's a classic episode every Star Trek fan knows. It's basically the Enterprise is trying to get this shipment of, what is it, grain or something?
Something like that. I forget the details.
And these little like creatures basically that are born pregnant and populate very quickly. And there's these little fuzzy balls essentially.
I wish I had my Tribble with me, but I don't.
Yeah, it's okay. But yeah, they basically take over. It's just a really funny episode. I really like that
goofy
episode. For me, number 9 is Amok Time, which is the infamous Pon farr episode where it's basically Spock every 7 years goes through this like mating what is it, like a mating kind of calling, I guess, that like just destroys his logic.
His Pon farr time.
His Pon farr time. So that's my number 9. That's a really classic episode.
It's kind of silly too, but it's great.
Oh yeah, it's a great episode. Number 8 is Balance of Terror. This was the first actual Star Trek episode I ever watched with my former coworker Bill. So Bill, if you ever see this, shout out to you. Thank you for getting me into the series. And this is when they basically encounter a Romulan vessel because they have to go. It's outside of the neutral zone, which is like the neutral zone's like this area where the Federation and the Romulans have like it's basically like a
neutral zone.
Yeah, a neutral zone where they're not supposed to enter it without it being an active war and all this stuff. It's really good, and it features the one actor who goes on to play Spock's father, who I really like.
He's good.
Yeah, he's very good. Number 6 is The Doomsday Machine. Number 7 is The Doomsday Machine. I thought this was a great episode. I really love this episode. There's just this giant, huge machine that destroys an entire solar system, and basically, long story short, they got to try to, destroy the machine because it's on a path to destroying another solar system. So it's a really good episode, really well done. And I don't know, I just really like it. Number 6 for me is City on the Edge of Forever, which I think is a lot of people's number 1. I always hear, like, whenever I see lists of best Star Trek episodes, it's always City. It's always, like, number 1.
When I'm sorry to cut you off, but the first time I watched the show the whole time, I considered that one my favorite.
Oh, really?
But then watching it again, it's not. But anyway, proceed.
I think it's a great episode. They basically have to go back in time to...
like the 1920s.
Yeah, 1920s. Yeah. I forget, why exactly they go back in time again?
Because they just end up on a planet where there's, like, this, like, archway thing.
Oh, and, yeah.
And McCoy's crazy, and he just jumps through it, so they have to go just retrieve him.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. So that's a really good episode, and there's a whole love story that's really good. Number 5 for me is Metamorphosis. This is a really interesting one where they end up on this planet where there's a... they basically encounter the long-lost inventor of the warp drive, and he's being basically kept immortal by this energy force that you find out later is in love with him, and it's just a really, really well done episode, and I cried. I love that episode. It was a beautiful episode. It was really
touching. It was like a touching romance.
Yeah, it was a really good one.
Yeah.
Some of the romances in the episode or in the show were actually really good. Some of them were really dorky.
A lot of Kirks are really dorky, but anyway, that episode's kind of like a comment on like you could view it as a comment on like love. Yeah. Defying, overcoming difference, and you know what I mean?
It was really, especially for its time, I feel like that episode was super ahead of its time. Let's see, 4 for me is Devil in the Dark. That is an episode where they go to this mining colony, there's this creature that basically it like emits some kind of acid that kills people or something like that. It's a little fuzzy, but anyway, it ends up being this like highly intelligent creature that Spock mind melds with. For those who don't know, Spock does this.
I thought you.
Spock,
I was like, what are you trying
Spock
to do?
mind melds.
Yeah.
And he can like basically like meld his mind with others, and he knows their thoughts and everything. And it's a really, really creative and great episode. Number 3 for me is Return to Tomorrow. This one is another kind of. It ends up being sort of like a love story at the end, but I do like the concept of it. It's basically these 3 entities who no longer. It's like they're from this like dead planet that they've stored their energies way at the interior of the planet, and they beam like I think it's like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy or something. They beam down and they discover these sort of essences, I guess you'd call them, and they want to basically borrow Spock, Kirk, and this woman's bodies to make robotic bodies for themselves, and then it ends up being like the guy who the one spirit that inhabits Spock's body kind of turns malevolent.
Yeah, he decides he doesn't want to give up Spock's body.
Yeah, because he forgot what it was like to feel and be able to touch people and things like that, and he decides he doesn't want to give up the body. So anyway, that's a really good episode, and the ending is like really touching, and I love that episode a lot.
Yeah.
Number 2 for me is weird because I know, and we'll talk about the seasons in a second, but this is from season 3. For me, it's For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. Now, I will preface this by saying that McCoy is my absolute favorite character in the show. I absolutely love McCoy. And this episode is probably one of the only ones where he has like kind of a love interest. And I also really love the premise of the episode because it's like McCoy has this disease that's like fatal to him. And meanwhile, they discover this like sort of asteroid that's in a collision course with one of the Federation planets. And they realize inside the asteroid is actually a whole civilization of people who are actually just trying to get to a new world so they can reestablish themselves. And it's a really, really beautifully done episode. It's the best, in my opinion, it's the best episode of season 3. And then
disagree, but it is really good.
The number 1 episode for me was Space Seed, and that's the episode with Khan. If anybody has seen the Wrath of Khan, the movie, I picked this one because this was the second episode I ever saw of the series, and I love Ricardo Montalban, the actor who plays Khan, and I just love the whole just the whole episode and his character, his portrayal of Khan is really good, and also I just love there's this one scene between him and McCoy that's so badass, where he's like, I love it. Like Khan like wakes up and he like grabs McCoy and he's like, if you're gonna kill me, I suggest cutting under the jugular or something. Like he just like he's so ballsy. I love it. So anyway, I love it. That's not the only
McCoy
reason.
Is undying.
Yeah, I love McCoy. So that's my top 10. So go ahead.
I'll do mine. I'll get into like mostly ones that you didn't do because there's some overlap.
Okay.
So number 10, I put the Gamesters of Triskelion, which is an episode basically where Kirk and some of the other crew of the Enterprise are beamed onto a planet and forced to fight in gladiatorial games.
That's a great episode.
And it turns out that it's like a highly evolved species that's basically just become like brains. They no longer have physical bodies, and they just entertain themselves by like betting on a bunch of like people that they view as slaves, and like they make them fight and stuff. It's cool.
That's a great episode.
Okay, number 9, The Trouble with Tribbles. You already got into that, so I don't need to go into that again. It's just delightful, and I especially love Scotty in that episode.
Yeah, Scotty's hilarious.
His fierce loyalty and like love affair with the Enterprise is just so good.
So there's a really quick just to explain. There's a scene with like where they encounter some Klingons, and like the Klingon starts insulting Kirk, and like Chekhov's getting really mad, you know, and Scotty's like, "Calm down there, laddie, calm down." And then suddenly, because Spock or Scotty is like, he's the chief engineer, and he's like just basically his first love is the ship, and so it starts the Klingon starts talking down about the Enterprise, and Scotty gets pissed off, and that's when the fight starts.
There's just like a big brawl. It's so good.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So silly. Okay, number 8 is The Naked Time, which, to be honest, I've seen it. I saw it a while ago, so it's a little fuzzy. But what I really like, and everyone kind of like is, I don't know. I don't remember if they're like kind of stripped down to their like a vulnerable version of themselves or whatever it is exactly. But what I really like about it is Spock's my favorite character, and I really like episodes that kind of like talk about his half human side and kind of like strip away his like his Vulcan like crusty exterior.
Oh yeah, where it exposes his emotional.
Yeah, so I really like that episode. Number 7, The Devil in the Dark. That's the one with the like, it's kind of like the mining episode, and there's like this like slug-like creature with the famous line of McCoy's where he's like, I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer. Yeah. So good. So good. Okay, number 6, This Side of Paradise. Once again, I really like it largely because how much I love Spock, and it's one where they go to this seemingly idyllic planet, and there's like these plants that like shoot spores out, and like Spock just goes all crazy hippie and like has like a romance, and McCoy like turns into like a southern
southern comes
like
out.
A relaxed southern gentleman, and he's like drinking a mint julep and stuff. And there's a scene where McCoy punches someone in the face while holding his mint julep.
It's a good episode. Some of the silly episodes of Star Trek are hilarious. I love them.
Yeah. Okay, number 5, The Empath. I love this episode. It's one where like there's a planet that's a star that's going supernova, and there's these aliens that are trying to decide which species to save before like all the planets get destroyed. And so they're doing the tests on this empath to see if like she can develop compassion and like the ability for self-sacrifice. And she slowly learns that from Spock, Kirk, and McCoy, and it's just like really touching. And at the end, she offers to save. Well, spoilers, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just really beautiful, and like it also like, I don't know, it's a lovely episode.
Oh yeah.
I really like it. Also, it has like great music.
The Empath was 2 of these that you mentioned, that one, and what was the one before All Our Yesterdays? They were just short of my top 10.
I haven't listed it.
Oh, sorry, and not All Our
That's
Yesterdays.
Okay. Whatever.
The one with... Yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. Alright, number 4, Metamorphosis. That's the one where we talked about where there's that alien being, kind of like it's like an energy that falls in love with a man. And I thought it was just... I'm a sucker for a really touching romance, so, you know, there's that. Number 3, All Our Yesterdays. Oh, I love this episode. I think this is the best one in season 3. It's one where, like, once again, it's a star that's going supernova, and Kirk, Spock, and McCoy show up there, and they accidentally get... everyone on this planet is escaping their death by the supernova by escaping into the history of their planet. So there's this library, and they can all jump back in time to a time period of their choice.
It's a cool premise.
And so they all get like accidentally thrown back in time, and once again, it's just kind of a cool episode. And it also like looks at the evolution of Vulcans over time and how they went from this like kind of like barbaric race to, you know, the logical beings that they are now. It's good, and there's a good romance in there too. So
with Spock, of course.
Yeah. Number 2, City on the Edge of Forever. Amazing episode. Yeah, I love anything involving time travel, and it was really bittersweet. And my favorite one is the one that you mentioned, Return to Tomorrow, where there's those beings that inhabit like Boro, Spock, Kirk, and that lady's body. And what I really like about it is I love stories about immortality and like dying, you know, and just the end of it's really beautiful, and how, you know, I feel like it's kind of like about how like togetherness is like, and love is the most important thing, you know, and some characters face death at the end, but with each other, you know.
And I actually felt like that was one of the best acted episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah.
'Cause you ever notice that? And it goes to show you how important the writing is in a show, because there's certain episodes where I actually feel like the acting is really good, but there's some where the acting is just awful. But I think that it could just be. I think it could just be the dialogue and the writing more so than the actors.
Well, it makes a big difference. See, like the Star Wars prequels for details. You know,
yeah.
There's some good actors in those.
So
anyway,
so just for the sake of time and stuff too, maybe we could do a top 5 collective one, because we have a lot that have kind of crossed over, and honestly, I would be willing to put like basically Amok Time there, probably Devil in the Dark, probably Return to Tomorrow, Metamorphosis, and then I'd put maybe like.
What about The City on the Edge of Forever?
Maybe The City on the Edge of Forever, yeah, as our top 5. I think that would be good.
Legit.
You know, and we in whatever order, you know.
Yeah, well, what are the ones we both had? The Trouble with Tribbles,
yep.
we both had.
Yep, Amok Time.
I didn't put Amok Time in mine. It was like 11th place.
Oh, okay.
City on the Edge of Forever, Metamorphosis, Devil in the Dark.
Yep.
And Return to Tomorrow. Those are the ones we both chose.
Yep, so that's pretty much our list. I'd be willing to put like Return to Tomorrow as number 1 would be fine.
Yeah.
And with honorable mention of For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. I love that one.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So that's our list anyway of episodes. And as far as final thoughts on the series, I just want to say that it's been like awesome, like watching the series with you. It's been great. We're going to try to watch The Next Generation, so maybe we'll... we're right now actually in the middle of watching the original 6 Star Trek movies. So we just finished the 4th one, so we got 2 more. Yeah. And then we plan on watching The Next Generation. So maybe we'll do this again after we finish...
7 seasons later.
Yeah, maybe after... seriously. Maybe we'll do this again after we finish the Next Generation, so I don't know.
I just want to comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
As somebody who saw this show for the first time like 5 years ago and fell in love with it, and I was like so obsessed with it for like a long time, and I still am, but it was really kind of cool to watch it with you, and like it's cool when you love something so much and you get to watch someone else experience it and like fall in love with it as well.
Oh yeah,
it was cool. And it's kind of funny now that it seems like you're going through a grieving process now that the show's over.
Yeah, it was so good. If you guys haven't watched Star Trek the original series and you like sci-fi, you gotta watch it. It's fantastic. You gotta take some of the episodes for what they are, because there's some cheesy stuff, there's some pretty dated stuff, there's some stuff that where the acting isn't all that great,
some funny fights.
Overall, it's a fantastic show. It's definitely become one of my absolute favorite television shows for sure. And me being a Star Wars fan, I'm okay also being a Trekkie now. So
I love both of them too. I don't understand why they even get compared.
Yeah, it's so silly.
I think the only reason they get compared is that they both are about space, and they're both like they have like a huge cult following.
Yeah, and they've both been hugely influential. Yeah. And you could tell by the way that they influenced each other. You could tell how Star Trek influenced Star Wars, and how Star Wars influenced the Star Trek movies afterwards.
Yeah. And probably brought back the whole series.
And by the way, both series were heavily influenced by a little sci-fi movie from the 50s called Forbidden Planet. I highly recommend Forbidden Planet if anybody hasn't seen that movie. That's a fantastic movie.
Well, I don't doubt that they were all highly influenced by like the mega time sci-fi writers like Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov.
Well, yeah, you even know better than me. You've read a ton of sci-fi novels that take place before, though. I mean, I'm sure you've probably seen where they've taken from all kinds of books, you know.
I mean, here and there, and also just in general, I'm sure that they were hugely influenced by them.
I wouldn't doubt that at all. Those are kind of the original sci-fi, you know, authors and everything. But anyway, I guess that's it. That's all I have to say. I just have to say that I really, really loved the series. I loved the whole cast. I have to say I love the dynamic between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Oh yeah.
They're my 3 favorite characters on the show, and Scotty as well. I really love Scotty.
The strength of the characters, just like a great story, like has to have characters that you just love, you know, and get behind and feel like you know. And I feel like Star Trek did that well. Yeah,
and I just feel like it's a really great series, and I'm gonna miss it. We're gonna have to rewatch it someday. So
we will.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's it for this video for now. I don't know what else we could say, but thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
And go watch Star Trek.
Yeah, go watch the original series. Let us know what you think of it. And also, I'd be interested to see what you guys, if those of you who watch this who are familiar with Star Trek, what your favorite episodes are. So feel free to put them in the comments below. And if this is the first time you've seen any of my content, I would appreciate a like, and I'll hope you also consider subscribing as well. I do mostly gaming content, but I occasionally do movie reviews, or this is the first TV series review, and I've done some like album reviews and stuff too. So it's just kind of like a mixed bag of content, mostly gaming focused, but I like doing stuff like this to shake it up once in a while. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you for joining me on the show, Mr. Spock, and Mr. Spock. Thank you for joining me in this video. And
it's been fascinating.
And thanks, of course, for watching the whole series with me. I look forward to the next generation. Until then, guys, I'll let you do it.
Live long and prosper.
See you later.